My name is Swati Patel, and I'm a product marketer on our Talent Hub team. And I'm very excited to help moderate today's discussion along with our customers. And of course, Dan Reed, who heads up our product team for Talent Hub. And let me tell you that the two of us are only representing a much larger team of our colleagues, everyone from engineer, design, sales, and so on behalf of them, thank you for taking the time to be here, and we're really looking forward to getting started with this discussion. On stage with me from our customers, I want to quickly have them introduce themselves so that you know who's up here. And so I'm going to start with you first. Go for it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Iannello, and I work for Flash Talking in New York City.
Hi, I'm Lamie Judici. I am the Talent Acquisition Manager at HaloTop.
I am Christina Dunbar. I am the Director of Global Talent for Scopely in LA.
Great. So before we jump in, I actually want to get to know the room better. So I'm thinking, I want you guys to clap out your responses here. How many of you have not used an ATS before? Wow. Okay.
Just one over in the corner, golf clapping. Yes.
How many of you are users of LinkedIn Recruiter today? Great. And how many of you are potentially looking to switch ATS vendors in the next 12 months? Okay, great. So I'm sure you have heard now, if you've gone to our keynote this morning, between Sarah Beth's announcement as well as that of John, you obviously understand how we got to this point today where Talent Hub and the ATS was the natural next step as an extension of our already strong talent suite of products. And so we really believe that we have the capability to offer a differentiated ATS based off of the strength of our core products, as well as the fact that we have data from now nearly 645 million members on our platform. But we also recognize that we can't be an ATS for everyone. And so what we really wanted to do when we created our system was to keep the focus in mind for our small to medium-sized businesses and really help you all solve what you're looking for when it comes to sourcing and managing together. I can go on and tell you all about the amazing reasons why I think Talent Hub is the best ATS for your business, but I don't want to take up too much airtime and do that, and I actually want to have our customers who are here with us today share with you their perspective of how they went about making the decision to purchase Talent Hub and be a part of our journey. So the first thing that I'm going to start off with is the development process for Talent Hub has spanned a great amount of time. I have been on this team for a little over a year, and I was heavily involved in what we have at LinkedIn called a charter program, which is basically a really unique program that allows some of our customers, potential customers, to actually come in and help us develop the product through a series of iterative discussions on a weekly basis. And what we really wanted to do was actually highlight the fact that Christina and her team at Scopely were one of our first charter customers. And so their team has spent an incredible amount of time, longer than most of our customers, in actually seeing the behind-the-scenes development of how our ATS came together and provided a lot of constructive feedback in order for us to get to this point in time. So firstly, thank you, Christina, and thank you to your team for being such a great partner to us. I think it would be really helpful for the audience to understand, based off of what you saw over time, how did your feedback impact what you saw evolve over Talent Hub?
Well, I'm glad to hear that it's been constructive feedback, so that's great. Yeah, like Swati had mentioned, we started very early, and I was very excited about being part of this because it was going to be an opportunity to really get something that we thought that we needed and that we weren't getting in any other ATS. Over this period of time, I could say that we've had wonderful weekly calls with Emily, who's not here, unfortunately, to really just say what we were doing, what our processes were, why we wanted to see certain things in certain ways. in general, we've probably made over 100 feedback inputs, and I would say in the last 6 to 9 months have really seen the changes implemented. I think at least 50% of our feedback and inputs have been, live in the system for us now. So the fact that you can move at that speed is very encouraging for the next 3 years as we continue to be a part of this.
And let me tell you, being a charter customer is an incredible, incredible use of their time. And so to actually emphasize the amount of feedback that was received, it was actually super constructive for our team because, of course, I recognize some faces who have already stopped by the Talent Hub booth in the In Lounge, and some of you vocalized things that you would like to see in our ATS, and essentially, Christina and her team also did the same over a series of months, and so it helps us as a product team to better understand how to prioritize what we're building and also ensure that we're building something that's universally applicable. So I'm gonna now turn to this side of the stage and direct my next question at Amanda. So Amanda's team actually never used an ATS before. So I know this will be really relevant for you.
One person. We're talking to you. It's good.
So she's never used an ATS before, and I'm very curious to know the decision-making process around why you wanted to use an ATS. What are some of the pain points that you were looking to solve for? And as you evaluated the market, how did you arrive to the conclusion that Talent Hub would be best suited?
Sure. So not having used an ATS, we really didn't have much of a starting point. We relied very heavily on external agencies for our hiring as well as employee referrals. So what we were using prior to this was just a basic shared Excel sheet, and the hiring managers would input candidates that they were talking to and where they were in the pipeline, and it was just very clunky, very messy. So when I came on board, I wanted to implement something that was going to make it more organized for us. So that was one of the biggest pain points, was organization, creating a more seamless way to manage our talent and how they were coming through the pipeline, where they were in their interview process, and things like that. That along with integration, because prior to onboarding with Talent Hub, we also utilized Recruiter. So the decision to move forward with Talent Hub was very heavily based on the fact that it was very similar, if not identical, to Recruiter. There wasn't a lot of change there. So it didn't involve a lot of integration, and there was nothing really that we had to learn or to utilize with anything different as far as the platform went, which was a big one for us.
Great, thank you. And now, having gotten the perspective of not having utilized an ATS before, Lemi, since you fall into the category of being a user that's actually switching ATS systems, I'm sure that there are similar evaluation points that you also considered, similar to Amanda's team. But we all know, and I've heard, how much of a change management process it is to switch from one ATS vendor to another. So very, very curious to get your perspective on how you prepared your team to go through a change management process and what you were looking at when it came to switching vendors.
So I'm a team of one. So I had a conversation with myself in the mirror.
Sounds like good advice.
We're doing
Nailed it. Yeah, that's good.
I joined Halo Top, and they had an ATS in place. It was sort of more than what I needed in some ways, which the read on that should be it was too clunky for me. And when I sort of reached out to the ATS and I asked them for training, they sent me some links to videos, which I don't have time to watch. So I thought it made sense to just sort of explore the market a little bit. So I spoke with a few different ATSs to see what they were offering, and some of them were great in certain ways, and most of them had sort of flaws that I couldn't live with. And ultimately, I went with LinkedIn because I live there already. I'm already there all the time, so it didn't feel like working. And especially for recruiters here, I mean, you need to sort of be so present for what you do. So to be sort of thinking about how you're going to log things after you get off the phone is, it's a major drain, I think. So I put together all these materials of these different ATSs with my recommendation, and then I mentioned to my supervisor I was going to run it by our co-founder, and he was like, just do it. And that's how I decided on Talent Hub.
Great. I'm very curious to know some of the early successes that your you, have already experienced as a result of Talent Hub. So I'll start with you.
I think the efficiency that has been talked about with Talent Hub in Sarah Beth's presentation and just in the in-lounge is the major win that we've seen. To be in one system, like you said, to do all of your sourcing, you're in LinkedIn anyway, to have to cross over to another system to just log that information is not efficient, right? And I don't know if you guys got the actual hours saved, but we can see so much of that already just, working in that one system, being able to look at candidates in multiple projects, seeing where they are, seeing what the communication train has been really helpful for us to stay connected to each other as a team. And, we're a global function, so to know who's talking to whom has been a huge plus for us.
I would say a huge win is that because everyone is sort of familiar with LinkedIn, it was much easier to engage hiring managers in the process because you can just sort of loop them in whether they have a profile or not, and they can, literally go through and save the candidates they want you to speak with. So, when I'm managing multiple recs, it's really helpful to be able to sort of log in the morning and see who do I need to schedule with right now. Who's the team interested in? And I think before that, there was a lot of heavy footwork on my end, and certainly not all the hiring managers want to handle that piece, but like most of them do. And it's fun for them to see candidates, and they unearth candidates that I wouldn't necessarily put in front of them. So that's been amazing.
So the biggest success for us has been the utilization of the talent pool. Anytime I would post a job, it would auto-populate a series of candidates that fit into the job spec that I had just posted, which was a huge help for us coming from agency-based hiring. So the way it would work for us previously was anytime a recruiter would submit a candidate to one of our hiring managers, they would look at the job spec, they would look at the resume, and they would say, okay, yeah, bring them in, that's fine. So having that technology more so at my fingertips as opposed to needing to outsource more has been huge for us. And that auto-population, that talent pool that it draws together, it's all the candidates that we, in theory, would like, and we've actually hired 2 of those candidates that I've pulled from the talent pool since we started back in May.
Great, thank you. Amanda, I'm going to stay on you. So the next question that I'd love to get your perspective on, and as well as everyone else, is one of the features that you've experienced in Talent Hub so far that you've really enjoyed.
So aside from the talent pool, the really big one for us is the scheduling tool. Because when we're doing hiring for a few of our roles, there are teams of people that need to meet with these candidates. I'm talking like 6, 7, 8 people in one interview. So the scheduling tool, being able to add all of the interviewers to one spot and see exactly what their calendar looks like and to pick a time slot that works for everyone takes so much weight off of my shoulders. It's so much more off of my plate to just, okay, this person, and this person are going to interview from 3 to 4, and this is their calendar. It integrates with our Office 365, and there it is right in front of me, exactly the time slot that works best for everybody.
I love the insights. We always hire in either LA or Chicago, Southern California, I guess I'll say, and Chicago. So if we've got an opening, like say for a graphic designer, I can really quickly see which market has a bigger pool and sort of advise the hiring managers based on that, or let them know what I'm gonna do. That is a huge time saver rather than sort of combing through one market, then combing through the second market. As I'm sort of building the project, it just sort of starts populating that for me. Like, here's where you're going to find the candidates, which I think is amazing and has been a huge time saver.
Great.
I think less as a feature specifically, but the overall efficiency for us with going to Talent Hub is the way that we do hiring at Scopely, and we have become strategic partners to our hiring managers. I always love saying hiring managers because that's their job. And so now that they can be a part of this, and LinkedIn in itself was built as a network, we're leveraging those hiring managers' networks, and they can reach out to candidates. They get better response rates because they're doing the same job of the person that they're going to talk to, or they're a leader of a function that somebody would be interested in working in. And the fact that we have that all in one place and we can see all that activity, and the talent team can kind of quarterback the situations, makes what we do more efficient to be more proactive, plan our headcount year over year of knowing who is out there that we want to be working with.
Great, thank you. So we wanted to leave plenty of time for you all to ask questions specifically of our customers, because you can ask any of us at LinkedIn questions all the time, but it's a really valuable opportunity for you to also get firsthand perspective from these three incredible ladies up here on stage. But before we turn over to audience Q&A, I want to give an opportunity to Dan to actually talk about, the evolution of Talent Hub and where he sees the vision for this product and the team's vision for this product as we look ahead.
No pressure, right? You get a feature. You get a feature. So yeah, that was good, right? So good. Good mic drop there. Almost like they planned it. Right. So the first thing is we really very much care about doing this differently and better. It would have honestly been quite a bit cheaper to just build an ATS that was a tab in Recruiter. We could have done whatever we wanted. We could have built it all from scratch, could have done it pretty quickly. When we decided to do this, we first decided to rewrite Recruiter and Jobs to be glued together. New Recruiter and Jobs is in some ways the fault of Talent Hub, because we figured if you can't put if you want to have source and manage together and you can't even put all your sources together, well then kind of what's the point? So there are three really quite serious pillars that we always consider as a part of the product. And when I say we, I'm going to say we a lot instead of me, because there's a lot of us. The first one is source and manage. In some ways, this whole conference is kind of a ripoff of that, better together. We really very much think those two things together make a big difference. So that's number one. The second one you already hit on, thank you very much, is the insights. I think in some ways it's probably one of my more favorite parts, and I'll touch on this again. Those insights aren't, I think a lot of times people think that LinkedIn's job is to automate everything and for you to press some sort of a button and it's going to do your job for you and it's going to pop up some great person to hire. That is absolutely not our goal. We are not going to build that. One, because I don't really think that you can, and if I did, you wouldn't believe me anyway. But number two, our goal is to build a really smart third person to whisper in your ear during those meetings about like, this would be a good person to consider. And that's really where those insights come. So hopefully, if you looked at any demos of the product or as you use the product, you'll start to feel that those insights being lightly dripped all over the place throughout the product. When you're creating a role, geez, maybe hiring a graphic designer is not going to work out in Chicago. Maybe you should consider doing that in SoCal, et cetera. But not being in your face about it, being sort of a quiet whisper in the ear. So that's the insights part. That's part number two. And I'm a product manager, so I always have to say everything in threes. It's true, it's like the law, right? It is. So like the law. The third piece is, again, a play on that better together, is we actually think hiring's a team sport. And you picked on this exactly because you're dead right. One of the things that, and I'm going to point at Sarah Beth here a little bit, that we spent a huge amount of time whiteboarding on when we started this project was, what is that relationship that we're trying to build a product around? And often, the thing that we always came back to is what Sarah Beth would always call the intake meeting. And that is that meeting where you're the recruiter and I'm your hiring manager, and we sit down and I give you some completely ridiculous, unreasonable thing that you want. You go, and you write it all down. In your head, you're thinking, Dan Reed is a fool. We're never going to hire that person, and certainly not at his budget. And I'm thinking, this is super great. I'm going to get whatever I ask for. And then 2 weeks later, I haven't gotten anything. And now I think you're a terrible recruiter, and you still think I'm an idiot. And that relationship is just so broken from the very first steps that how can you make anything work if you can't fix that? So we very much tried to re-envision, partially re-envision things that were already on LinkedIn, but also re-envision the way that other folks could be involved in an ATS. So we have hiring managers and recruiting coordinators and all those types of folks should be in the tool and collaborating, not just as one of those like, oh, you can only have a seat that's good enough to just barely kind of see a feedback thing if we feel like it. We really actually want them to be a team sport. So we really think hiring is a team sport. So those three things are always our strategic pillars. Now, getting a little more granular, and I'm not going to talk forever here because you guys should ask questions. One of the things you find out pretty quickly when you start to do something like an ATS, which should be no surprise to any of you, but sometimes LinkedIn is known as a consumer company. So sometimes it's a little bit of a surprise to folks at LinkedIn, is we're not an island. And we need to integrate with pretty much everything. And that's something that LinkedIn, I don't think is a surprise to anybody in this room. Traditionally, we haven't been very good at. So one of the muscles we've really been working on is working a lot more with our partners, getting more partners, having a proven track record with those partners, and doing, when we do a partnership, doing it right. One of the things is we don't have as many partnerships as some folks might like. We're very much working on that from a roadmap perspective. But what I want to explain to you is every one of those partnerships that we do, we take very seriously, and every one of those is going to be done very well because we'd rather do it right and take our time rather than say we have something and have it fall on its face because I have some checkbox that says I did whatever background check vendor you like, but the integration is terrible. So integrations is one of them. Reporting is another huge one. One of the things Jeff Weiner, maybe he quoted it, maybe he stole it from somebody, but I'm going to give him credit, is if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. So what's the point of an ATS if you can't tell what's happening in it? So we've invested a huge amount of time in revamping a lot of our reports. We have lots of work to do. You'll see a lot more reporting and metrics and tooling in the system. And the other, honestly, that I'll say is a larger bucket, and one of the reasons that I'm so grateful for these folks is this is not a product that you can build in the traditional Silicon Valley way, which is a bunch of smart people get some funding and sit in a room and tell each other how great they are and like unleash their idea on the world. That's never happened, right? Like, no, okay. So that just isn't going to work. I could be the smartest person or the dumbest person in the world, but I'm not going to know all of the individualized details of what you all need. So some people have criticized internally, why has it taken you a year and change to go from when you said you were ready to have customers use it to when you're even announcing it for generalized public availability? And the reason for that is because we don't know what we don't know, and we'd rather, no offense, I'm gonna use your brain, we'd really rather hear it from you all. So one of the things that I hope you hear up here is not, this is our roadmap, and we think that this is the next thing, and it's gonna be super great. We're trying to be very humble and listen to our customers and get feedback about their use cases. Now, that sounds great, right? It sounds like free ice cream for everybody. It's gonna be great. We're gonna do all your features. It's gonna be super great. The free ice cream already happened, but I'm just cheating. It's really good. What that means is, if you're a larger customer, we might not get to you quite yet. We are very intentionally starting with smaller customers. Because when you start to get to larger ones, you start to get into things like, you start to have weirder compliance rules, you start to have customization needs, you start to have different types of things that are harder for us to get right in the beginning. And what we're trying to do is get that core part of Talent Hub exactly right, and then use that as a springboard if it makes sense. But if you can't get the first few steps right of walking, you're never gonna be able to run, and we're very, very, very focused on that. And I think the last thing that I would say is you will always see Talent Hub very much as a cohesive portion of the LTS, LinkedIn Talent Solutions, of the LTS strategy. One of the things I think someone in marketing, it might have been Liz, said when I first showed Talent Hub, she said, why does it look just like Recruiter? Like, can't you make it look different? Can it be pink or something? And the answer is, you're welcome. We tried really hard to make it work with Recruiter and work with jobs. That was really difficult to do. So you will always see it be a part of our larger platform strategy and never be this weird thing off on the side that you have to integrate with. It should always feel together, and we're going to very much stick to that. So those are some of the things. I'm sure you all have different questions, but that's a little taste of where we're headed.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. If you haven't already gone to the Talent Hub booth in the In Lounge, I highly encourage you to do so. You'll meet a ton of our colleagues who are very eager to give you demos of the product and help answer questions. Also, we have a couple of couches and incredible s'mores, so more reasons to come by. So yeah, we'll be there all day today as well as tomorrow. And now we'll turn it over to you all for your questions. There are a couple of mic runners in the room, so I'm happy to also,
mic, yeah.
I'm also happy to hand this mic out as well.
Hi, I'm just curious for the hiring manager interview scheduling, what the email requirement is. Do you have to be on, what system you'd have to be on?
So let me repeat the question. For calendaring, what systems do you use? You can either use Google Suite or Office.
Okay, but there's no version of Office. You have to be at least on this version of Office.
Some of the on-prem stuff is a little trickier, but in general, just Office in the cloud works. I mean, we can get into the details if you have a specific question, but yeah, generally they're fine. There's always some weird thing I don't know about, but
Correct, but generally it's good enough.
you never say always as a product person. You always get stung. So.
I have a question. Do any of you still use a separate CRM, or are you truly using Talent Hub as an ATS/CRM, recruiter, all of that built in and baked in as it was originally designed and intended?
We didn't have a CRM. I'm very loud, so. We didn't have a CRM. We were, really manually doing CRM functionality. And so we are now using this as our ATS CRM. All of the ATSs that we have looked at did not have that candidate-focused function. It was about filling the requisition. It wasn't about what was going on with the person and how to keep up with the person. And so utilizing this system has allowed us to do the recruiting the way that we want to do it, and have all that information, and then ultimately be able to close the requisition. I think that's such an after the fact of what we're doing. And with the reporting, there actually is a lot of customization in this with the reporting, and it's amazing because we want to measure what our team is spending time on, and it might not be the same things that your team is spending time on, and being able to kind of see where you're doing the work and measure it for the team and measure it for the business has been really hugely beneficial for us.
You want to add anything?
Question back here.
I keep it all in one. Yeah.
Question over here. Question I think a lot of us have, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but tell us where did you come up with the sort of 1,000, the SMB? Like, what's the product roadmap that would elevate this to maybe a mid-sized company that many of us have worked with or using other, like, is there an intention to go beyond the 1,000 employee to sort of the mid-market, the levers and the job bites and the greenhouse space, or is that sort of not in the sweet spot right now for LinkedIn in terms of the product?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Is it okay? Yeah. So we made up 1,000. Obviously, there's nothing magical that happens at 1,000. Let's be clear about that. Yeah, nailed it. The other thing I would say is if you'd like to have a conversation about what the definition of SMB and mid-market is, everybody in this room would have a different definition, so that's always a tricky thing. The first thing that I would say is a large part of the goal, my first bullet point, was source and manage together, right? So interestingly, the first thing that we did before we built Talent Hub was build Recruiter System Connect to help source and manage work together with all of our partners. All of the ones that you just mentioned are partners of ours and do support that functionality. So we fully understand that source and manage is important, and there are two ways to get it. One way is with Talent Hub, and one way is with Recruiter System Connect. Now, to answer your question of when exactly we might do such a thing, we don't have a specific time frame of when, like, we're going to do this, and then this thing's going to happen, et cetera. What I will say is we are committed to getting that current market completely right before we try to go take another market, because for us, it's incredibly important to do this differently and to have that feel be different. We're not in a rush to go up market. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just what do you think are the big features and functionality that those have that you guys aren't ready to maybe to take on yet? Is it in the workflow? Is it in the compliance? Is it in the reporting and dashboards? Is it, or maybe none of those things or all those things?
Well, there's a couple answers to that. Obviously, some of them I already mentioned. It takes a long time to integrate with everything that everybody wants to integrate. So if you need an integration with something that we haven't gotten to, many of our partners do integrate with those. So integrations is one. I mentioned compliance is another. As you become a larger customer with a much larger set of people being involved in the process, so hitting your process word there, sometimes those processes and those all the rules you have to follow, sometimes government rules, et cetera, become more onerous, and we have to pass specific tests. For example, if you do a huge amount of government contracting, Talent Hub, not for you, right? Because there's all sorts of crazy things that you have to pass, and I'd have to show that I could certify that, and we just haven't done it. So and I think the last category is, sometimes it's death by 1,000 cuts. When you get to larger companies who have more complex processes, like, I wish it worked this way, I wish it worked this way, and making a more customizable system takes time, and we haven't gotten that right yet. Is that a fair answer? It's okay?
Question over here. As far as the system goes, was it built with a mind for security and making sure it's hardened? My situation would require some very intense security audits before we can implement a system like that, and I'm just curious if you guys have built that with those sorts of audits in mind.
Well, I don't know what your audit is. It sounds scary, but...
We can elaborate on
No, I don't want, you weren't supposed to answer that. I was just, it always sounds so intense when we talk about security. So first of all, if you haven't noticed, LinkedIn cares quite a bit about being a trusted social network. Forget about Talent Hub for a second. So Talent Hub, similar to Recruiter or Jobs or anything, is never going to release any feature that puts anyone at any sort of risk as far as we can tell. We have done immense amounts of work to make sure that our process supports a GDPR compliant process. And of course, GDPR is another one of those conversations we could have over several bourbons. But from a security perspective, Talent Hub is built on the exact same platform that Recruiter is built on. So any audit that would happen there as a part of our system would generalize, and again, I'm generalizing here because I don't know exactly what we're talking about, would generally be the same. There is always an exception, of course, which is sometimes the compliance is your process. So you could use my smart tool to do something dumb if you wished. I can't always prevent you from doing something dumb, but in general, we're not going to force you to do something dumb or something insecure. Does that answer you? I mean, it's hard to answer your specific question. It's like you're kind of not super satisfied with that, but.
So for context here, the one of the tools in LinkedIn Recruiter, the calendar syncing, that doesn't pass a security audit at the company I work at. So I'm just curious if the system itself is more secure than that integration, or if it's equally secure, less secure.
In general, equal to more. It's never less. But the details, we could get into it.
So I have another question. When it comes to non-exempt, hourly kind of hiring and sourcing, et cetera, do you find Talent Hub to be pretty user-friendly when it comes to either creating profiles for people who may not have a LinkedIn profile or creating a record in Talent Hub? Is that pretty easy? Is it pretty seamless? How well do you find how effective do you find it to be for the non-exempt hourly type hiring?
I built it, so I think it's easy. But so, no. Here, you want to go?
We don't have a lot of those. So I'm just adding a candidate to the system is very easy. Hopefully they have at least a resume and it's a parse, right? But I think this also encourages people to kind of go onto LinkedIn and have a LinkedIn profile with all the extra tools of skills assessments. And so I think that it's becoming less where people don't have some kind of profile, but it's the same spot when you add a candidate.
Yeah, sure. So occasionally I get pulled in to help with scoop shop employees who are hourly. And actually did do a project and sort of what Jeff was talking about earlier with the growth in that sector. We noticed because we got a ton of applicants that way, and it was really not different from any other kind of a search. Easy.
We're 2 for 2 with your questions, right? It's pretty good.
Since she asked the second one, I feel the need to ask the second one as well. So some of you talked about how you use this as a CRM, and I heard you talk about how realizing LinkedIn isn't on an island, you got to partner with multiple, and sometimes competitor processes too. So you may have said this, but I just want to make sure I heard it right. So if I had this and I used it as my CRM, and I also bought a database with Indeed or Career Builder, we can take those candidates and upload it into the system. That's still separate kind of from the ATS, but all in the same spot.
If you wish to, sure. If you have a CSV file full of people or something like that, you can put them all in a project. Sure.
Thank you.
And we'll try to match them if maybe we've seen them and we can, yeah.
Did you have a question? Yes.
Oh yeah, here we go.
You all mentioned how the process now with this has helped get the hiring managers more involved in the process. I work with a lot of hiring managers that, would absolutely don't want to help me at all. They just want the candidates. So if you guys could give, I guess, a little bit more feedback or talking about how they've gotten more involved and how that's been successful or how they've been more involved. I know you said you can come in and see who they'd like you to talk to. Are those, people that have applied, or are those people that you're actively recruiting? Or I guess just a little bit more on how the hiring managers have been involved would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so they can see the talent. Can they see the actual talent pool?
Depends on what you give them in the project.
Okay, yeah. So if you there are a lot of controls, so you can decide what they see. But yeah, you could show them the talent pool. You can show them the applicants, and they can see generally the pipeline, so that they know kind of where people are. But yeah, so in my experience, they've gone directly into the applicant pool and comb through those. And there, obviously you can narrow things down, but.
So if you don't have hiring managers partnering with you, by brute force, you will get them to. No. So like somebody had said, they're already using LinkedIn Recruiter. LinkedIn Recruiter, we're like, look at this profile, please give me a rating. And so it's actually a little surreptitious to go in and say, and now also do more things in the same system. So for us, we had them kind of looking at profiles, helping us source, using their networks. A lot of our hiring managers want to reach out. They want to have the ability to in-mail, and this system allows them to do it. And so it's actually made it a little bit easier for them to understand the process of where we are with the pipeline because of the visibility that this will give them now. And the accesses that we have been working with of, who can do what and how do they help allows you to have different levels of jobs. So there are some jobs that we have that we are never going to get a qualified applicant, and we have to source it, and it's going to be passive candidates. And then there are some jobs that are going to have a pretty strong applicant flow that the hiring manager can ping, 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 reach out instead of waiting for a recruiting partner to do so.
Yeah, I'll add a little tiny something. Do you have anything? Yeah, you do that and then I'll.
So one of the things that we focus on is I try to put more accountability on the hiring managers instead of it all falling onto my shoulders. So when they reach out to me and they say, okay, well, where are all the candidates for this job that I gave you a week ago? And I can tell them, well, I submitted you 3 candidates at this time because it's time-stamped, and I requested specific feedback. You haven't taken the initiative and gone in and provided said feedback. So it's up to you now to review those candidates, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't, and then we can move forward. So it gives them more accountability as long as you hold them to it.
Yeah, what I was going to say is one of the bad or good things about building a product is you always draw on your own experience. So I interview lots of people, and one of the things that I always disliked about an ATS experience is sometimes it says, okay, now go fill in your feedback. And I fill in my feedback, and then it's like, bye now. That's it. There's no more. Well, what if you knew who I was, LinkedIn, And after you came in and gave some feedback, you could kind of bop around and say like, well, I'm connected with Swati and she knows this other person that might be good. What about this one? How come we can't have this one? That seems like exactly the sort of thing that LinkedIn should be able to do, which is what we tried to build. Of if you choose, and you could keep everybody out and tell them to shoo after they fill in their scorecard if you want, but if you would like to invite them in, you can have them fill in their scorecard and then take a gander around in the project and see if there's anybody that maybe you're connected with, because you as the hiring manager, we know who you are in LinkedIn and we know who you're connected with. So that's kind of the idea of Better Together Network. I keep coming back, Better Together. Oh, so you better not have any questions at this point.
This is not planned. Obviously, we've been working on Talent Hub for the last several years. It's been 3, and we just announced it. It's live. You guys have all been our early customers. I'd love to hear from your perspective what you believe the benefit is to being an early adopter of technology. I think that it can be scary for some people who just see for the first time that, hey, we're here, we're entering a really complicated market. And so we'd just love to hear it from your perspective.
I'll start. So the best thing was being able to provide our feedback. Like there were things that went really well. There were some things that were a little clunky in the beginning, and we were able to provide real-time feedback about things that are working, things that aren't working, things we'd like to see moving forward, features that would be more beneficial to us, and we have a huge say in the things that are being implemented moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same. I think the only thing I would add is that you have access to this like one-on-one attention. So when you have a question or when you don't understand something, you can talk to a human being like within 10 minutes, which I'm sure Daniel promised to everybody in this room.
You guys better hustle. You better get in on the early part. Or we're going to run out of steam on that. But yes.
Yeah, it's been great.
I think that we were excited to get involved because we wanted to see something different. Every ATS, it could have been, a early startup company that decided that they know better than the rest of us that recruit every day how to tell us to recruit. Went and made something, but we wanted to be involved because we wanted to see how our thoughts actually transpired into building technology. Working for a games company, we get to see a lot of product being made as well. And so our team is super excited about kind of being in that process.
But not everybody gets 10 minutes.
Hi.
Oh,
I
there's a
have
question back.
2 questions. One should be pretty simple. So a hiring manager would have to have a LinkedIn profile to participate, correct? No?
Yeah, today, yes.
As of today?
Wait, depends. So it depends on what you mean by participate. So you do not have to have anything to be able to give feedback. But if you want to come into the product and like bop around and look at how you're connected with people, obviously, then yes.
Okay, perfect. And then my second question is, when it comes to workflow, like requisition approvals or offer approvals, what are all of you doing to administrate those workflows?
We were just talking about this yesterday.
We were, that's true.
We're like, build it now.
I'm working on it.
So where Scopely is in our growth stage, we are still doing headcount forecasting planning 2 times a year. And so we're kind of doing like mass uploads of requisitions. And then we have the kind of off-cycle requests that are coming in. And so, the ask was that we kind of get backfill heads kind of working through the system first before we do the massive beginning of year headcount approval all through the system. But this is definitely something that the team is working on. We've talked about at length. Instead of having an email chain back and forth, the system will be able to hold all the information that the hiring manager is looking for, and then they can see where that approval chain process is too, because right now with our back and forth emails, it's just like, and what's going on with this? So I think that's in the works, but no promises.
Anything to add?
On time, no promises on time.
I mean, to answer one of the gentleman's questions earlier, we have an approval process right now, but it is not a complex approval. If you have, multiple people and serial and parallel, we don't do well at that yet. This is something that is in process. We're working on it actively right now, but as of today, it's not all the way done. So again, back to that commitment of we got to get this part right before we pretend we're something that we're not. Oh, sorry. Okay, we made it to 0.
I know. Time to One more question.
Hi. Obviously, a lot of us have different interview processes. Just wondering if this platform takes into account that some people use assessments or hacker ranks. Does that integration exist? And then also at the end of the process, what does the offer stage look like? I'm sure I can figure that out by watching the demo later, but does it account for hourly, exempt, non-exempt, salaried templates, remote offer letter templates, and then does it integrate into an HRIS system?
That was many questions.
Sorry, I
I
was
feel like
keeping it
that's at
quick.
least 5. No, so let me see if I can pick those apart. So first of all, right now we have like a DocuSign integration, for example, to do offer letters. Offer letter templating is up to you. We don't actually do native offer letter templating right now. What we found is that most people would prefer to do that in Word or use them inside of DocuSign templates, which works pretty well. We have HRIS actually launched this week. HRIS integrations with some, maybe not every HRIS, but we're working on that. So we have HRIS integrations live, and that's going to push data in of whoever got hired in. You also talked about the different hiring processes. Was that the other part? I'm trying to remember all the questions.
Yes, and assessments, hacker ranks.
And assessments. So you saw quite a few announcements today on main stage about assessments and asking people what they're good at. There's a myriad of those. Some of those you can do as a part of the application. Some of those you could decide to ask somebody to take a follow-on assessment after they applied. Like, okay, you made it to the next stage, now go take this test. We have some things coming out around asking people to submit a video. So after they apply, you press a button. It says, hey, would you please submit a 2-minute video on why you might be good at X, Y, Z, or you can enter a text thing because not everybody is allowed to do a video, et cetera. So there's a lot more there. We're working also more with not just our own assessments products, but some third-party assessments products. Somebody might want a particular code test or something like that. So yeah, these are areas that we're investing in as parts of those integrations of, again, I'm going to say better together, but it's not all going to be built by LinkedIn. Is that a fair answer? I tried to hit a bunch
Yes,
of
thank
those.
you.
Sorry for that.
The only thing that I would emphasize is we're very committed to building out a robust partner ecosystem. And so our business development colleagues are actively talking to and speaking to a number of vendors across multiple partner categories. And so actually you surfacing some of these questions is super helpful. And if there are other providers that you work with, I encourage you to come by the booth and give us those names.
It's great. We really appreciate you all taking
Yeah,
time.
thank you so much for the
So
time.
means a
And
lot.
huge thank
Especially
you to our
thanks to our
panelists.